Thank you for joining Host Family Exchange Student Life. On this channel, we help you navigate through real-life hosting and exchanging so that you can have an extraordinary experience. Today, we are having an interview with my friend Donna, and I'm excited because she has a lot of experience from a lot of years with a lot of different students. Thank you for coming today, Donna.
Happy to be here.
How long have you hosted?
I hosted for 5 years when my daughter was in school and a few years after.
How many different kids did you have in different countries?
Well, during the school year, we had, over the years, we had at least five kids. We had a few who came in the summer for short periods of time from at least 5 countries, mostly in Asia. We had one from Brazil, but the rest were Asian countries.
So with having exchange students in your home, and you have 2 of your own children, how did that influence them? How did that influence your parenting?
Well, we started hosting when my son went off to college, which left a bedroom empty. And so that was a good time for us to start. It influenced my daughter, of course, much more than my son. She went to the same school. She had a good experience. She made good friends. She has friends now all over the world. So she had a much broader experience in high school than she would have at a regular high school. And she even went to Vietnam with one of our students for a couple of weeks after a school year. And it was an excellent experience for her.
Going back to kind of what goes on in your home, I know feeding foreign exchange students in your family, that's a big part of it. How do you navigate that?
Right. It is important to feed them. We heard many stories from other students during the years that we were doing that. They said, our host family doesn't feed us. And I thought, how can you do that? That's crazy. We changed over the course of any school year. First we'd have more regular meals, but since we had mostly girls, and during the course of the school year, they tended to take on more of the responsibility for their own food, because that way they got what they wanted rather than standard American meals. And so they would tend to start cooking for themselves. I noticed they would cook a big meal as soon as they got home from school. So they didn't want a family dinner at 5 or 6 o'clock. They were done by that time. But so it was my responsibility to make sure they had the food that they wanted in the house. It helped to go to Asian and international grocery stores. I took some students to Cub once, and they went around the store a little bewildered, and finally in the produce section they found yams. It's like light went on because that was something that they understood. And one student held one up and said, I used to take these to school. And I said, you'd have them for lunch? She said, no, I'd have them for dinner. Like, what? How long were you in school, for goodness sake? Their schools lasted until like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So they tended to take over cooking for themselves, and that worked fine for me.
You have hosted from a lot of different countries, and so you've seen different reactions with how students experience and deal with American cultures, or anything you want to share that would help our viewers?
It's important to be conscious of the difference between how they grew up and where they are now, especially in terms of personal freedom. Because a lot of them who've grown up in very restrictive environments get to America and it's, wow, it's great. They love it. Also, schools are very different here than they are, for example, in most Asian cultures, at least as far as I can tell. Pretty rigid and very demanding. And so school here seems like a vacation to them. You need to be conscious that they are experiencing something they haven't had before and might get a little excited about it. We had a boy who came to us in the summer and just stayed up all night on the internet doing games that with other people because he couldn't do that. He was suffering during the day because he was up all night. Some of the older kids wanted to go out to clubs and things like that, and like definitely against the rules, can't do that. There were many aspects of just they wanted to be an American teenager. That was the experience they were looking for, and so you can't always allow that to happen under the school rules or whatever. Just safety rules. You can't do that. So.
Talk about your relationship with the coordinator and the school. Is that important? How should you treat that?
I took it as a responsibility to act as if I were those kids' parents. Mm-hmm. To go to the teacher-parent meetings, to actually drop them off at school, although that's not always required, but I found it helpful because when I dropped them off at school, I could go in and talk to the administrator, and if something was going on, I could maybe hear back. I could get feedback from teachers. I got some good insight sometimes into what needed to happen. The school administrators are your backup. I mean, I remember one time one of the girls that I had symptoms of appendicitis, so we were there in the hospital. The school administrator showed up and took over, and I was grateful on my knees to her, I'll tell you. It was a good thing. So it's good to have a good relationship with them. The school would have picnics, the school would have activities, and it was helpful to be there and to interact with other parents and the school administrators. It's good to know them, absolutely.
So we were talking a little bit earlier about the guidelines that host families are given and also the students are given. How important is that to follow them, or is it okay to be loose? What are your thoughts?
It's dangerous to be loose. It's certainly tempting because you want to be their buddy, but things can go wrong pretty quickly. And with teenagers especially, that's very scary. Those rules are there because somebody has had a problem before, and these rules are supposed to fix that problem. So it's you're really much safer staying within the school's guidelines. And maybe you have to explain that, and maybe you have to go into some background, but you want to follow the guidelines.
I do agree with Donna on that. How did you typically communicate with your student about things that they needed? Did you meet on a regular basis, or did they feel open to talk to you at any time? Like communication, how did that work? We
tended to keep it fairly open, and I again drove them to school every morning, so mm-hmm. there was an opportunity to talk. Mm-hmm. A lot of times they would get home and hunker down in their room, and they were fairly private sometimes, but and also my daughter was there for a few years of the experience, so she had a peer interaction with them.
And do you have any experience with your exchange students dating?
That mostly happened there wasn't a lot of leaving from my house to go out on a date because they're spread out. Okay. So most of the interactions happened at school. Okay. So you'd have all the drama, but you wouldn't necessarily be watching your watch to see what time they came home. So because they don't have cars, and so we weren't exactly on an easy bus line. So you still have to deal with the teenage drama. I mean, it's going to be there. Just assume. This is a short-term experience, and usually the people that they're falling in love with are not from their hometown. So they're going to be ending this relationship at the end of the school year for the most part. You don't want to have broken hearts at the end of the school year.
Yeah, true.
Although sometimes that will happen.
Yes. Yep.
Actually, the most heartbroken boy that I ever had was. He didn't want to leave. He called me afterwards. He just cried at the airport, and I had no idea he was that invested in his experience.
Oh, that's sweet. All right, do you have any other thoughts or encouragement you can give to maybe people who are thinking about hosting, or maybe have signed up but haven't? Any tips that might help them?
Overall, it's a good experience. You want to make sure that they have their own space and an opportunity for privacy when they need it, because it can get very, very tense if they don't. I found that not having 2 kids to a room or more kids to a room made a world of difference. So give them their space and be there available for them when they need you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Donna.
Happy to do it.
Yeah, I'm sure she could tell us tons more. Maybe we'll have you on again sometime.
Whatever you need.
All right, thank you. Thank you for joining Host Family Exchange Student Life, where on this channel we help you navigate through real life hosting and exchanging to help you have an extraordinary experience. Question of the day: is there a topic you'd like me to discuss to help you on your journey through hosting and exchanging? Find peace in this world, and we will connect soon. We finally have a student again since the pandemic began, and it is going great. I hope your school year is going great as well.